And so, while justice seemed to have drawn a thin line between guilt and innocence, Marco's life entered an even more intricate and surprising phase. In the months that followed Ricardo's discovery, his father found himself immersed in a reality made of painful reconstructions and new discoveries. Every morning, waking up with the fixed thought of his son's pale face and frightened eyes, Marco realized that recovery would not be immediate. With custody now in his hands, Marco began to live each day with an intensity he had never known. As he rebuilt the little habits he had lost, he tried to create a peaceful and familiar environment for Ricardo. Their home, once a theater of silence and secrets, slowly became a refuge of warmth and renewed hope. Each room was furnished with care, and Marco devoted himself body and soul to transforming the old apartment into a place where the past could coexist with a future full of light. In his moments of pause, Marco indulged in intense memories of the past, shared laughter, days spent at the park and winter evenings spent together. However, the memory of Ricardo's disappearance and forced imprisonment remained like a shadow. So he decided to also rely on the help of a psychologist, an old friend who had experience in childhood trauma. During the sessions, between sometimes broken words and silent tears, the little boy slowly began to reconstruct his memories, those buried under years of fear and isolation. The path was not linear. Some days seemed promising, while others brought to light old wounds that did not seem to want to heal. But in the midst of all this pain, there was also room for rebirth. Marco, who for years had put duty and dutiful sacrifice above his own well-being, began to rediscover himself. He signed up for a photography course, a hobby he had always wanted to cultivate. With a camera in his hand, he found a new way to see the world, and this helped him convey a different perspective to Ricardo, that of a universe made of beauty even in the little things. Walks in the park turned into real photographic adventures, with Marco teaching his son to look for the light even in the darkest moments. One evening, sitting together on the balcony as the sun set, Marco told Ricardo a story he had picked up during his trip abroad, a legend about a young hero who, despite the difficulties and injustices, managed to free his kingdom from a dark curse thanks to the strength of his heart. The words, simple and sincere, touched something in Ricardo, who for the first time in a long time showed a glimmer of curiosity and hope. That story became a symbol for the little boy, a reminder not to give up, to always look for that light even when everything seems lost. Meanwhile, on the legal front, the matter became even more complicated. Although Sarah and Daniela had been accused, many doubts and contradictions emerged from the testimonies collected during the investigation. Marco, tired of a judicial system that seemed to reward appearances rather than the truth, decided to launch an awareness campaign on social media, telling his story in the first person. The video that went viral touched the hearts of thousands of people, transforming personal pain into a collective denunciation of the injustices that often hide behind the facades of family relationships. The public response was overwhelming. Messages of support, similar stories, and even testimonies from those who had lived similar experiences in the past began to flow, creating a network of solidarity and sharing that strengthened Marco's determination. "You are not alone," the comments said, and that simple phrase became a mantra, a silent promise to never give up. The campaign, in addition to shedding new light on his story, stimulated a broader discussion on the role of justice and the difficulties of those who find themselves trapped in dysfunctional family situations. At the same time, Marco began to devote himself passionately to his activity as a former National Guard, transforming his military experiences into a new perspective on life. He organized meetings and workshops for young people in difficulty, telling his story as an example of resilience and inner strength. In those meetings, his tone was always colloquial, almost confidential, as if he were talking to a trusted friend, and this sincere and direct style won over the audience, who saw in him a beacon of hope. Marco's personal transformation also had repercussions on the local community. In a small town in San Columbano al Lambro, a support group was formed for separated parents and children in difficulty. Each meeting was an opportunity to share, to listen, and to find together new strategies to face daily challenges. Marco, with his experience and his charisma, became the point of reference for that group, and his story inspired many to believe that, even in the darkest situations, there is always a possibility of rebirth. One day, during one of these meetings, an episode occurred that left everyone speechless. A young man, moved by Marco's story, revealed that he had overcome a similar trauma and found the strength to rebuild his life thanks to the support of a welcoming community. That moment, full of emotion and mutual recognition, was the catalyst for a series of concrete initiatives: the creation of a reception center for families in crisis, the launch of awareness campaigns, and even the start of projects to restructure the territory to create common spaces where citizens could meet and find that much-needed sense of belonging. Meanwhile, Ricardo, who had initially lived in a world of fear and isolation, began to rediscover the joy of play and lightheartedness. With the support of the psychologist and thanks to the activities proposed by the support group, the child slowly found the ability to smile without fear. The days spent outdoors, the little adventures in the park, and moments of play with other children helped to rebuild his trust in the world. Marco proudly observed his son's progress, aware that, despite everything, human resilience is capable of overcoming even the deepest wounds. As the winter season loomed with its biting cold, Marco's house transformed into a warm refuge. Next to the lit fireplace, among old books and yellowed photographs, father and son spent long evenings telling stories, laughing and dreaming together. In those moments, every word, every look, was a small act of rebellion against the past and a commitment to a better future. Marco realized that the real battle had not been against Sarah or against the system, but against the silence that had tried to stifle the light of his child. Over the next few months, new questions began to emerge. Who had really orchestrated the disappearance? What secrets were hidden behind the seemingly normal facade of Sarah's family? Marco, always in search of the truth, decided to investigate on his own, questioning old friends and colleagues. He discovered that there were many inconsistencies in the stories he had heard, and that Daniela, Sarah's mother, seemed to hide something more than simple maternal concern. His research led him to find a former teammate in the National Guard, a man who had witnessed strange behavior and suspicious movements in Daniela's life years before. Those conversations, held over a sip of coffee and a shared memory, opened a window onto a story of hidden ambitions and uncomfortable truths, making Marco understand that the path to justice was still long and tortuous. In the end, it was his determination and the unexpected support of a united community that gave him the strength to move forward. Marco's story, made of tears, twists and rebirth, spread far beyond the borders of his small town, becoming a symbol of the fight for the truth and for the right of every child to live free and loved. And as the seasons followed one another, Marco continued to walk, step after step, along a path that, although marked by indelible scars, brought him ever closer to a future of hope and rebirth. That autumn night, which had marked the beginning of a long odyssey, had become a guiding light for all those who, like him, had known the pain of separation and the cruelty of fate. And today, watching Ricardo as he played carefree under the clear sky, Marco knew that every sacrifice, every tear shed, had had a meaning: the victory of light over the darkest night. Ultimately, Marco and Ricardo's story was not just a family affair, but a hymn to resilience, to the strength of the bond between father and son, and to the ability of the human being to be reborn, even when all seems lost. And while life continued to write new pages, Marco was ready to live each day as if it were his last, with the awareness that, after all, true wealth was not in money or power, but in the love he knew how to give and receive.